Okay, welcome everyone. Super wonderful to see you here. I'm Phoebe Walker, the Director of Community Health at the Franklin Regional Council of Governments, and I am joined here by our fabulous presenter, Andrea Freeman of the Public Health Institute of Western Mass, someone with a lot of experience in advocacy of various kinds. And we are doing this training because we're trying to build our skills as a region to advocate for the budgets we want and the legislation we want. And in particular, because this is going to be a really hard year in Massachusetts as legislators and make really hard choices about what to prioritize. And we want to be heard during those hard times. And if we choose not to be heard, that's a choice, right? So we want to have the skills we need to weigh in and sort of demystify that process for ourselves. The legislators are really clear when you talk to them that they need to hear from you. They're not experts in everything, and you're the expert in your thing, and they really do want to hear from you. So we're really looking forward to talking today about what is advocacy and what is lobbying, and then to apply it to the budget process and other ways in which money gets allocated in Massachusetts. Next week's workshop will feature the same advocacy and lobbying information at the end, so those of you who are signed up for both don't have to see it twice, but we'll start with the legislative process and how best to advocate there. So that's the overview of what we're doing. And we're really pleased to see you. We'll have time for questions at various chunks throughout, and you can always feel free to put your question in the chat. And I will turn it over to Andrea to introduce herself and kick us off.
Thank you, Phoebe. Hi, and thanks everybody for being here. My name is Andrea Freeman. I'm the Policy Director with the Public Health Institute of Western Mass. I've been there about 3 years, and previously I was with the Mass Public Health Alliance as their Field Director, and have had an opportunity over the past decade plus focusing on state level advocacy and lobbying in Massachusetts, focusing on a variety of issues related to public health and social determinants of health. And so I just really want to thank you for your interest in being here to learn more about the budgeting process, because it's not the sexiest of terms or titles kind of thing, but it is a boatload of money every year that gets decided. And I think that's fascinating because it's all about resource allocation and who decides, and has a great impact of what the health and well-being of our communities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about advocacy and lobbying. We'll talk about the process for how and who decides the $60 billion a year in Massachusetts. And then we'll talk briefly about ways, some tactics and methods, timing for strategic advocacy with regards to the state budget. We'll have a couple, and we'll have time at the end for some questions, discussion. Please do not be shy. And also, if there's a clarification point that you need in the moment, please, if you can put it in the chat or put your hands up, or do something like stop. Like if something I say means you won't be able to understand what comes next, we want to fix it before we go further. And so with that, Phoebe, shall we get this show on the road? Okay. So we just want to touch on a couple definitions, and we're talking about a murky subject, but it's hugely important to understand, and that's the different of the concept of advocating or educating, and then the concept of the definition of lobbying, and all those terms get tossed around interchangeably. And knowing also that lobbying tends to really get a bad rap. It's kind of like something that, you think that people are doing in dark, smoky rooms, even though they're not supposed to be smoking. But that's definitely not the full story. Because at its core, lobbying really it's a civic duty. It's a civic responsibility. it's not just okay to do what is with your as a nonprofit, as an individual, as a municipal, as an elected leader in your community. I mean, it's necessary as Phoebe was saying earlier, is that legislators, they're human. They can't know everything. They can't know what's going on the ground, and they represent us. And so they count on us to get information to them. Um, and so we want to make sure that we get accurate information to them at the right time, and we want to follow the law and in terms of lobbying and advocacy. And so if we could go to the next slide, please. The idea that so advocacy is really like the umbrella term, the umbrella concept, and that we other things come underneath it. And advocacy is about, it has to do with educating, it has to do with providing information. But then there's direct lobbying, on the other hand, is going to be more specific because it's about trying to influence a specific piece of legislation or a budget item, which a budget technically is a piece of legislation, but because it's so big, we always refer to it as just something different. We refer to it as the budget. And so then if we go to the next slide, you see that there we've got direct lobbying, which is part of advocacy. And then we've also got indirect lobbying. So two different types of lobbying. And the idea is that direct lobbying is when you make a specific ask to an elected official about a piece of legislation, whereas indirect lobbying is when you ask or encourage others to do so. It's that 1 degree of separation. And both of those things are totally appropriate to do on, in your own time. I mean, that is completely an acceptable way to, where all the Constitution guarantees that we can share, our what we think with our legislators. But the reason we're talking about this today, about when does lobbying, when does advocacy lean into step into lobbying, direct or indirect, that's important if you're getting paid to lobby. If you're doing it as part of your job, or you're hired as a contractor to do lobbying. But basically, if it's part of your job, this is where we just need to be more mindful. Okay, so let's see. Um, so here we wanted to just touch on what, again, the recipe for direct lobbying. And I talk about it as a recipe because truly, if you don't have all three of these ingredients, you don't have that cake you're trying to bake. Or it wouldn't be a very good cake. And so those three things, remember we had direct lobbying as a triangle. So it's because there's these three things there, that there needs to be a piece of specific legislation that you're talking about. There needs to be an elected official or their aide, which is why aides are always super important. Never discount an aide when you meet with them. And then there needs to be a request for a specific action. Please support this. Please don't support this. Please talk to please move forward on this. Please increase this. So those three ingredients are key, the key definition. If you're not requesting an action, it's just advocacy. If you request an action um, and you're talking about specific legislation, but you're not talking to an elected official or their aide, that's not lobbying. So again, you have to have all three ingredients there. And this is just this photo in the background. I just took it a couple weeks ago. This is on the left is Senator Velas's general counsel, and then a couple students from the UMass Chan Medical School that we took to a group of them up onto the Hill for, the emerging doctors to learn how to lobby. So, okay, next one, let's look at an indirect lobbying. Okay, this is a perfect example of indirect lobbying. This is my colleague Jackie. She and I were working on working with community residents in Springfield to talk about how they can help pass a piece of legislation. So again, we've got that same thing, a specific piece of legislation, an elected official or an aide, but it's asking others to take action. So that counts as lobbying as well. And the the state government doesn't really care about the difference between direct or indirect, but the federal government, that they want to know which is which generally. Um, but this is what the direct and indirect is what we're talking about here. And then let's see, let's go to the next one. Okay, so now I'm gonna pose a rhetorical question to you. So you can answer it in the chat if you want, but I realize, um, so this is gonna be kind of a test for you. So who can limit or prohibit you from lobbying on your own time with your own gadget or device or pen or paper, stationery? Who can? No one. I see Larry's got it right there. Exactly. Exactly. There's some very, very, very few exceptions that I learned once. Like apparently some judges, not all, but some judges are not allowed to lobby. And I don't even know if that's by specific law. Um, Okay, to take action. Thank you. Okay, Julia, what does take action refer to in this context, please? Okay, thank you. To taking action would be doing that outreach to an elected official, um, a call, an email, a going up to talking to them at an event and asking them to support something or not support something.
I
Does
think
that
you're
is
saying, Julia, you're asking about the three pieces of the ingredient. And it is so it's with you're asking, please vote for House Bill 353, or please increase the Chapter 90 money that comes into communities by $10 million next year. So it's the specific action that you're asking. If you're just coming in to say you're a big fan of highway funding or funding for home care, that's also not lobbying.
right? Or if you come to inform, like there are tons of potholes in our street. Maybe it's point of fact, but that's not lobbying. That's information. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Good
Thank you.
question. Thanks. Okay. So the next question here is, so who can limit or prohibit you from lobbying on the job? Because again, the reason we need to be really clear about what lobbying is and isn't is if we're getting paid for it. Yep, a funder is absolutely one of them. And even just your boss, right? Exactly. Yeah, Jen. An employer. Yeah, your supervisor, like unless you are the top dog for your company or your nonprofit you need to make sure that you're not expressing an opinion that is not cleared with your team, so to speak. You don't want to, nobody wants to be a lone wolf out there. You can have it on your own time, your own opinion, but you just want to really be mindful with it before you represent an organization or a council or anything like that.
One thing
But
I wanted to just add for that,
yeah,
because we do have a number of people on who have elected positions or appointed positions. And so if you are a member of a body like a select board or a board of health, you can definitely lobby as I am a member of the Montague Board of Health and my field, blah, blah, blah. You cannot say the Montague Board of Health has asked you to do this unless you have a vote of the Montague Board of Health or the Buckland Finance Committee or, that sort of thing.
yep. See the thumbs up from Rachel there. And I actually just had this question from a city councilor who wanted to, endorse a piece of legislation that we're advocating for. And absolutely, she could say that she endorsed it and that she's a counselor of this community, but she could not say that the city council endorsed it. Okay, so when you're receiving money to do lobbying, there are definitely some things you need to be aware of. So let's go to the next slide and look at some of the cautionary guidelines. Okay, so the yield sign here. This is where first, really three core questions you want to ask yourself about lobbying. And first of all, is your position, is it partially or fully funded, by state or federal funds? Because if you're fully funded by state or federal funds, then you're right. You need to you're not lobbying on the job. That's just, the no. But you can do it on your own time. That's what I always want to come back to. If you ever hit a wall to say, no, I can't because of this, there's always another way you can do it on your own time. The next question is, if you're getting paid to lobby, do you do more than 25 hours in a 6-month period, or do you receive more than $2,500 for doing so? And this is a Massachusetts thing. This is not an IRS federal thing. This is specific Massachusetts state law. And it's okay. You may lobby more than 25 hours in a 6-month period. If you do that, you're to register with the Secretary of State as a registered lobbyist. I'm a registered lobbyist. I never thought I would say that, and but yeah, I mean, a lot of people you probably don't even realize are registered lobbyists. And it just means every year you fill out a form, and for nonprofits, there's $100 fee for your organization, and then $100 per person of who's being registered. So my organization, there's 20 of us on staff. The organization pays $100 to register it, and then I'm the only registered lobbyist on staff because I'm the only one that does over 25 hours in a 6-month period. And then there's some reporting that you have to do. Because again, Massachusetts, they really care about how much money, where the money is coming from. And there's a public search. If you want to see who's lobbying on what subjects, it's a pretty cool spreadsheet on the, and we'll provide the link to it because it's a rabbit hole you can go down and it's fascinating. And then the third question is, like Jason had mentioned, even if it's not the government, are you receiving funds from a private foundation? Is it coming from a corporation who they just don't want, they don't want you to lobby. They want their money not going to lobbying, so they don't even have to think about it. And if it's their money, they get to call the shots, right? So, as the saying goes, you always want to follow the money. And if you're not sure of what source or sources is paying your salary, that's going to be kind of one of your first things to find out if you're thinking about doing more lobbying or doing any lobbying on the job.
I wanted to
Okay,
add one thing to that because
please.
it is one piece of homework we wanted to give everyone here who has the potential to be lobbying on the job, which is to go back and actually find out everything you're funded by and what the rules are. Because there are many grants that you may think is a state grant. I'm thinking about there are at least 4 people on this call who I know are funded through the Massachusetts Community Health and Healthy Aging Funds. That sure sounds like state money, but it's not. And lobbying is explicitly encouraged in that grant source. So your homework right now at the end is to go back and find out if there's anything you charge any of your time to that is okay with lobbying on the job.
And I'm going to give gold stars to Phoebe for being one to really press to really make it clear and explicit for the Community Health and Healthy Aging Fund. Can we lobby? And came back and got the okay. And yeah, and in fact, HRA has at least one registered lobbyist in Massachusetts. Okay, so here is a little chart to try to make this a little bit more digestible. Basically what we were just talking about, so if across the columns, across the top, okay, if you are 100% fully funded, kind of what can you do in this world of policy and politics and civic responsibility? If you're 100% fully funded, your organization on the job, you can still do voter education and registration. That's not expressing opinion, it's education and access. You can still educate policymakers, reports, data, stories, photos, field trips. It's a way to make it easy and memorable and understanding to legislators. Can you partner with people that lobby? Absolutely. It's just you can't be the one to say, can we get another $1 million for this? You can your person you're sitting next to can, but you may not. So again, no direct you can see the no's here, no direct lobbying, no grassroots. We're going to click indirect lobbying is in grassroots lobbying is the same thing, depending on who you talk to. Um, can you help with a political party? No. Nope. Can you candidate? Nope. Nope. None of us. Anybody with a nonprofit, with an agency, no, nothing partisan, nothing allowed on the job. Off the job, absolutely. And so then partially funded, same. If you're you have 30% of your salary is state or federally funded, then the other 70% of your time is, you're okay, you're free to go. You're not doing it on their time. It may sound like splitting hairs, but that's literally how it's how everybody does it. And then same with if you're, limited by other lobbying restrictions. So okay, let's see. So now it's time for a test. Gonna just check you all, and you can write it in the chat if you feel like it. But okay, we have Ada's a public health nurse for a town, and she goes to the Massachusetts State House on her day off from work to join a group of people talking with legislators about increasing funding for local public health in the state budget. Is this lobbying?
And if so, which kind?
And if not, why not?
You can also unmute if you want.
I saw Jen shaking her head yes, or nodding her head yes, and she's right. And this is direct lobbying, perfect example of direct lobbying. And it's fine because she is doing it on her own time. I mean, that day off from work was the key thing there. Okay, let's try the next one. B. Bella's a member of the town finance committee, and he testified at a state legislative hearing on the budget, and he shared charts and information about the challenges of that funding rural schools and town governments. Is this lobbying? Okay, I see Donna shaking her head no, Jen shaking no, Julia, okay, correct. And it's again, sharing information. It was at a legislative hearing. It sounds all very official and but you're right. There's not a request. There's not a specific piece of, well, if he was at a budget hearing, it was about the budget, but there wasn't an opinion. There wasn't a, we need more in this line item. We need less in that line item. Okay, last one, last test. Last quiz number. You know what? It doesn't seem to be advancing, but I think I have it somewhere else.
You don't see it?
No, I still see B.
Oh, that's weird. Oh, you know what? I bet it's that, remember I told you how the button is attached to the,
Oh,
let's try
okay.
going back one.
Well, I've got it here. So this is C. Okay. This is kind of a complicated one. So Chris is a child psychologist who works with a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And let's see, she writes a report about the impact of social media on youth mental health. Her organization posts a report on its website, pays to boost it on social media, and prints a few hundred color copies of it. And then Chris takes a copy of the report to her legislator when they meet for coffee. And the next day, Chris posts on a quick post on TikTok with an overview of what's in the report and asks parents to contact their legislators to encourage them to vote for a bill that would ban cell phones in public school classrooms. Is this lobbying?
And are you now seeing it on your screen?
Yes.
Okay, good.
What's lobbying, what's not? There's a couple answers here. Okay, Donna's got indirect. Yep. Ask the post on TikTok,
Oops.
asking people to contact their legislators. Perfect example of indirect, or also known as grassroots lobbying. What about paying to print color copies, posting it on social media? Is that lobbying? No, no, because it's about the impact. It's research, it's information. Yeah, so it's not an opinion. So even though she met with her legislator about it, she handed her handed her a copy of it. Not lobbying. Okay, so now if we could take, I think we have an opportunity for a few minutes of question. Oh, I just wanted to let folks know, we'll provide this link to you. This is an 8-minute video about kind of all the lobbying that we covered. If you want to check it out or share it with others. There's some students at the UMass School of Public Policy and an attorney there. We made this together last year, and I hope you find it helpful because Massachusetts is unique. Yes. Oh, thank you, Jen. Okay, next slide. I think this is just if we have a few questions, right? Oh, actually, yeah. I'm gonna halt for a second. Do we have any questions about lobbying
I,
or
I had a,
observation?
I had a,
Yeah.
I had a question on the last one. It seems to me it would be prudent for her to have asked her supervisor or her boss, unless she is the boss, whether or not this behavior was appropriate.
The posting on TikTok?
No, the whole idea of her printing her report and doing all that activity.
Oh, good point.
What
Very
if
good
that
point.
501(c)(3) had a specific prohibition on indirect lobbying?
That's it does, it gets complicated quickly, right?
Mhm.
So when we wrote that little vignette, it was with the assumption that it was printed using organizational money, that was part of their, a part of one of their missions, one of their organizational strategies. So that I didn't say that, but that was my assumption. But you're right. If she went home on her own time and posted it on
Yeah.
TikTok, that is, that's indirect lobbying if she did it on her, or it's indirect lobbying either way. Did she do it on her own time or on work time? Did she do it on the work social media account or her personal? That's where it makes a difference. Yeah,
But the
absolutely.
assumption is that she would never have made the report and printed it if that wasn't something she was working on. They were working on youth mental health or something like that. But good point.
Yeah.
Good to check.
Yeah, exactly. And again, same thing. If you want to do it on your own time, if you're doing lobbying on your own time, your own personal email account, your own cell phone, your own laptop, your own stationery, your own stamp. That's what it means to be on your time. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to be sitting in your home, but yeah. Okay. So any other questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the budget, the $60 billion elephant in the room here. So this is just a graphic just to give you a sense of scale of different size budgets and where kind of Massachusetts fits in into the scale. So $60 billion, it's no 7 trillion, but it's a lot of money, right? And so this is right about what the state budget is. This year, we're in current fiscal year 25, and it's right around 60 billion. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so, so the question is, who decides on this and when and how? And really, it's the governor and it's the legislature, in kind of a rather unique dance that they do over the course of several months. And so what I put up here is a really simple. First, we're going to look at a more complicated one in a second, but I wanted you to see this really just kind of very linear process of how our state budget works. Basically it starts back in January. Our fiscal year runs July 1 to June 30th. So our new fiscal year isn't starting until July 1st. But back in January, the governor was required by our state constitution to put out a draft budget by the fourth Wednesday of the year, or it's within 4 weeks of the legislature convening, which usually turns out to be the fourth Wednesday of the of the year, unless it's a new term, it's a new governor, then you get a whole extra week if you're brand new to the office. And so that the governor puts out a draft, and you probably, I'm guessing maybe you've all seen, like when she puts out her draft budget, you see all these news articles saying like, oh, there's going to be this much spent on this, and oh, there's going to be this charge for that. It's not for sure. This is just a draft. She's just kind of spitballing. You know, it's the governor, it's got some power behind her, but it's just kind of spitballing some ideas there. It's not a done deal yet. And so then moving into like February, March, the legislature, they start holding hearings around the state, and they have different, you know, the transportation hearing, the education hearing, the health and human services and public health hearing. And I can tell you, our Senator Jo Comerford, she's now the assistant she's vice chair of the Senate Ways and Means. She has been driving all over Massachusetts. She's been in Gloucester, she's been on the Cape, she's been in Clinton, to be at these in-person hearings. I'm just in awe of what she does and what she learns. So that's in March, and a little bit into April, to where we are now. And then April is really considered the House Ways and Means. The House is the House budget. April is always the House, they have to go first. And then May is the Senate budget. In June, hopefully, we're at a point where the conference committee, you know, people from three people from the House, three people from the Senate get locked in a room and try to come to terms with their differences between the two different budgets. And so we'll go through this more either. I just wanted you to see that how early it starts in January, and that then it's like one the House and then the Senate. It's all this step-by-step process. So let's go to the next slide. So this actually is a graphic that I really like that comes from Senator Jo Comerford to explain the process. And here she points out that in the fall, in the far left blue box there, that's in the fall. That's when they start getting input from department heads, and they start getting information about how much the Department of Conservation and Recreation needs, how much, you know, does the Department of Mental Health need, how much, you know, what is going to need all these individual different departments, how much is going to go to, you know, for local aid. And then in January, very early January, I mean, just like, you know, depending on how you work your own budget for yourself or for your family, your home, you also need to know, like, how much are we gonna have to spend? Like, how much revenue are we bringing in before we start going deep into how much we're spending? And so this is where they have, there's this consensus revenue decision that gets made to decide, like, okay, what's the number we're all gonna kind of work on from now? And even though we're 6 months before the fiscal year starts, we've got to make some decisions now. So there's a I think it was January 9th that the consensus revenue number came out, and that was like 40 some billion that they're expecting, and that included what they referred to as the income surtax, which I know it more as the fair share tax or the millionaire's tax. So that 40 some billion is the revenue that they were, 43 billion that they were expecting to bring in. And so that's kind of the number we're working from. And so we talked about this being a $60 billion budget. So the question is, where's this other, you know, 43 billion isn't 60 billion. So where does that come from? And, you know, some bunch of that is, you know, from the federal government. We hope. Not all of that. There's some other little sources that that will come in that they don't include in the consensus revenue. So then, let's see. So then we move on into there's the hearings again in March. We get into the April, it's the House, May, the Senate, June, conference committee, and then goes to the governor, who can take a pen to that version of the budget, to whatever the House and Senate send her. Because I want to point out that when the governor issues a budget in January, like kind of the running joke is that, yep, she puts it out in January, and then the House and Senate crumble it up and throw it away. And the House starts fresh and they write their own budget. And then the idea that the Senate, they crumble up the House's budget and they start on their own. So that's just kind of, I just want you to have that picture that none of these are set in stone just because they issue a budget. So I want to move on now to the next slide, because I want to delve deeper into one of these blocks, because it is important in terms of when there's opportunities for advocacy. So, of course, in January, before the governor issues her draft budget, it's worth a letter. It's worth a letter to the governor saying what you think she should include in her version of the budget. And in that, you'd want to get that out easily in December. So that this is everything is just, you just got to plan for, get ahead of the game for them. So then in April, the House Ways and Means Committee, so it's not the House is 160 legislators, but then the House Ways and Means Committee is like 36 of them. So it's a little club within the bigger group. So they release their draft budget. We're expecting that it's usually the Wednesday before school vacation week. So we're expecting it on April 16th. So again, if you want to influence the House's draft of the budget, you got to get something to them well in advance, even January kind of thing. So the House, this House Ways and Means, they issue their draft. And, again, they're only like not even, they're like a quarter of all the legislators. And it's pretty safe to say that the rest of the legislators, they're not satisfied with that draft that this one committee put out, right? And so this is what then they have an opportunity to file amendments. We're like, okay, we see your draft, but we also want this, and we also want that, and we also don't want that. And so basically over school vacation week, usually more than 1,000 budget amendments get filed by 160 House representatives. And so there's, if something's missing in the House Ways and Means budget, another opportunity to advocate, to go to Natalie Blay or to Lindsay Sabados as my representative, to go to a House member, not a senator, because remember, we're in the House now. This is only about representatives, to go to them and say, this number isn't high enough. This is ridiculous. This isn't high enough. Can you file an amendment to increase this number? Or this left out a key word about what it's describing. Can you file an amendment to add language to this? So there's about a week-long time period where House reps can file these amendments. And then also that's when other representatives can co-sponsor budget amendments. So that's also another opportunity to contact your legislator to say, hey, I could call mine, say, hey, Natalie, I could call Lindsay Sabadosa and say, can you co-sponsor Representative Blay's amendment to increase funding for RTAs? And then you can look online and see if she did it or not. It's again, it's like a black hole. When you start getting into it, it's fascinating and it's amazing. Like 1 or 2 calls can get co-sponsors on an amendment. Doesn't mean that amendment's going to get included, but it helps, right? Okay, so we get amendments co-sponsored, and then the last week of April, they'll call House Budget Week, and that's really when our representatives spend a lot of time at the State House. And the folks in Western Mass, man, they are doing a lot of driving, or a lot of them I know stay overnight, a couple nights, because there can be some really late nights. And there's meetings behind closed doors because they have to go through 1,200 amendments. And so this is when they start, this is having the floor debate and voting on which amendments to keep. And if they're going to keep them, they get bundled and the bundles get voted on kind of en masse. And they usually do them by topic again, like transportation amendments or health and human service amendments. Or if they don't get bundled, they get rejected. Or sometimes people will withdraw them before decisions get made, or they get merged. Or I mean, it's total sausage making at this point. And yeah, these meetings behind closed doors, there's no reporters in there. It's not videotaped like the hearings and things are. The best you could do is, if you want to know what's going on, is to if you have if you could text your house rep and encourage them to do something. That's the only way to do it, because you're not going to run into them in the hallway. Um, so yeah, the amendments get bundled, withdrawn, or rejected, and then the House votes on the overall budget. That what comes out in the wash here with the House budget, and that's still not final. Okay, but it's just the House version of the budget, and we're not going to go through this with the Senate because it's the same thing. It's just a shorter period of time because there's only 40 senators. Shorter period of time, smaller number of amendments, very same process. And then they come out with their budget. So now we have the governor's budget was out there back in January. House comes out with their budget, their agreed upon budget in April, Senate in May, and then it goes into the conference committee to reconcile any differences there. So what we're going to focus on now, I'm not going to go in any further about the back and forth with the governor. That's a whole other process. But I just want to talk to you a little bit about kind of strategic budget advocacy and lobbying. And think about it as, I mean, and this is really what political science is all about. It's about influencing decisions on resource allocation and how do you do it, what works well and what doesn't. And it's about content, getting the right information to the right person at the right time in a good format from a good messenger. And I know this says, like, it makes it sound like there's one piece of information and one right person. There's no one right way. It just means, like, important information to the appropriate people at a reasonable time, an effective time. And so what I'm just going to focus on here now are mainly the right times and the right format or method. So let's move ahead here. We're going to look familiar. We're going to just go back to Joe's, Senator Comerford's diagram here for key opportunities for lobbying or advocacy, or not lobbying, of just providing information. So in the fall, if you work closely with state agencies, and it might be a key time to share information with them. If there's budget shortages or there's something new that's happening or new trends, let them know as soon, in the fall. Maybe you submit a letter to the governor saying, there's this new trend in our county and in our town. We think this, here's a way to solve it if we're able to do this with this money. Same also in going to the hearings in March. They're open to the public. You can attend, you can listen, and then even you can sign up to speak, which literally will take almost an entire day. So it's not for the faint of heart. You can watch online as well, but it's still not for the faint of heart. And you can submit written testimony. It's also okay to just go for like an hour or two to listen and watch and see who's there, because like tons of legislators are there. And so, but in March is the key time to be getting information or even specific asks to your House representative. And it's also it's fine to get it to the House senator, to your senator as well. It could be the very same ask to your representative and your senator at the same time. The senator's getting it just a little early, but that's fine. And then in April, if you're getting down into the weeds and and there's amendments and maybe, you follow an advocacy organization and they let you know, okay, there's a key amendment up, contact your representative to co-sponsor this amendment or that amendment. And so that could happen in April and May, asking for co-sponsored amendments. And then again in June, when the conference committees are meeting, so you can submit a letter to the conference committee to say, the House put this much in and the Senate put this much in, and we really want the House version, please, and here's why. So a letter to the conference committee is another bite at the apple. So basically every month here, there is a way that you can weigh in. Um, you don't have to do them all. It's okay if you do a couple and then it just falls off your plate and you go back and do the next one. So there's many opportunities to advocate and to lobby for the budget. Any questions on that? Okay. Jen?
Um, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so I have two questions. One is I'm going to add the information about the other kinds of budgets in the chat.
Thank you.
And I wanted to make sure that that was okay and that you weren't going to go on to that. My question is,
yeah.
So at the beginning of this process, there's an estimate of revenue. And is there a requirement to make the spending match the estimate of revenue? So when all these people say, I also want you to spend money on this, and also this costs more than you think, and also we want this, and also we want this, how does that reconcile with the revenue? And where does the revenue come from?
Yeah.
I know that's more than one question. Sorry.
Yeah, Larry, I see you came off mute. Would you like to offer?
I remember last year, I went to my first day on the Hill with the school people. And one of the speakers said, this is a zero-sum game. If you get more money for Western Mass rural schools, somebody else is not getting that money. That's why this is difficult. And so it's all about persuading the people that have the money or would benefit from the money to give a little bit of their money to us poor people out here in Western Mass, because we need it more than perhaps they do. So it's a zero-sum game. It's all from the tax revenues. And, we used to get federal money, but I don't know if that'll ever happen again. But so you just got to know that it's hard because somebody's benefiting from the current system. And if it isn't benefiting you, you're going to have to take money from them. That's why this matters.
Right. And if they are in touch more frequently and more vigorously than you are, then they won't take it away from them.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And it's hard, and this is why it's the challenge of resource allocation. The money comes from sales tax, it comes from our income tax, it comes from the registering your car, at fees that you pay for licensure. There's all sorts of ways that, money goes to the state, but some of those things, it's money in, money out. Hunting licenses, fishing licenses. So it comes from a lot of different sources, but which is why it was such a big deal when we passed the Fair Share Amendment in 2022 to create a new revenue stream to tax people earning incomes over $1 million a year. And that, which brings up, I'm just going to mention so we've been talking here about I've been talking about the annual operating budget for the state. There's also what they call a supplemental budget or a SUP budget. And that's when there's this beautiful situation where there is some additional revenue that over the course of the year, some new revenue came in, or taxes came in at a higher rate, and there was a hearing last week because more money came in from the fair share tax than they had budgeted for, like to the tune of $1.2 billion more than they planned on. And so there was a hearing last week with a supplemental budget, the governor has to file a draft supplemental, and then the House chews on it and spits it out, and then the Senate's gonna chew on it and spit it out. And that money can only go to education or transportation. And yeah, it's challenging, like how much goes to which one? And then, okay, even within education, where does it go? Within transportation, where does it go? Um, so that's a supplemental budget, which is like very exciting to be able to have a sub budget in the tail end of the fiscal year. At the same time, the there's also what you may have heard of as 9C cuts, because we as the Commonwealth is required to have a balanced budget. We can't go into debt like the federal government can. We have to be balanced. And so if it gets to a certain point where revenue, expenses are exceeding revenue, the governor, in fact, last year she had to make some 9C cuts. So it's meant to be in an extraordinary situation. Okay, Julia, yes. It's the fair share income on the millionaire's tax. That money, that revenue can only go to education or transportation. Yeah, okay. We're a few minutes behind, but I think we're almost to the very end, right, Phoebe?
We are. I think we were just going to describe bond bills.
Oh, right. Okay, so you know how with your own, like we all have our own kind of, day-to-day operating, our daily expenses month to month that we, utilities and groceries and all that stuff. That's what this the state's annual operating budget is about. Sometimes, like say if you want to buy a house or buying a durable good, um, there needs to be a little more planning for that. And so the state will pass these bond bills, usually most of them last for about 5 years. And you may remember last year we passed Affordable Housing Act, or they call it the Housing Bond Bill. We do transportation bond bills, and there's going to be an environmental bond bill coming out in another week or so. And this is not money per se. It's kind of more like a narrowed down plan of like it's like pre-approval kind of thing, that it's not for sure that you're going to get this $10 million for this rail trail, but you might. And you definitely wouldn't get it if it's not in there. So it's the first of a couple flaming hoops to make it through. So can you celebrate getting $10 million in the bond bill? Absolutely. Celebrate that and keep working, because you're going to need it to come out in the governor's capital budget. So this is all different. They're different because there needs to be bonding. There needs to be bonds floated in order for that revenue to actually become real. I think so. Again, the governor's puts out every year. The governor puts out a capital improvement plan, and for 5 years, she puts it out every year, but it's for 5 years, so it's always kind of looking 5 years ahead. And then also every year puts out a capital budget of where are we going to put to buy. It might be to buy buildings, to buy fleet vehicles. It might be to you name it, to build a new school. It might be any number of things that is beyond the daily funding. So
One thing
yeah.
I was just add about bond bills is sometimes legislation gets attached to them as well. They are a thing that passes both houses. And so that is how one of our highest priority bills for the last few years, the SAFE 2.0 bill that sort of modernizes local public health, that's how it went through all the whole beautiful process, and then it got attached to a bond bill.
Yep. Because that's the other way to think of it, is any piece of legislation, whether it's a budget or a bond bill or a regular bill, it's a vehicle. And if it starts moving, you can hitch a ride. And that's basically what happened to the local public health bill that Phoebe mentioned. And it happens. So I hope this just kind of maybe gave you a little bit of an insight on the process. And I know to track it day to day as an individual, it would be, it's too much to do it unless this is really like, a major part of your job, which is why I encourage folks to pick a couple advocacy organizations that they know and trust and respect and follow them and sign up to get their action alerts and follow up on their actions because they'll send them out at a specific time. I mean, often we'll have them ready to send as soon as we know that amendment number. And then we hit send to, people that we think will take action by calling their legislators. Don't pick too many organizations. There's a lot of good ones out there even at the state level.
And also you can, if you want, you can go into the Mass Legislature website and you can make a login for yourself and you can follow a bill and you will get an alert when there's going to be a hearing. So it just takes a few steps, but it is not hard to go in and sort of star certain bills and then you do get an email, which is a good reminder. And it also just reminds you to go look at the whole committee. Once if the budget, she's been talking a lot, Andrea, about the Ways and Means Committee. Well, you don't have to only talk to your legislator. They might not even be on the Ways and Means Committee. So you want to send an email to everybody on the Ways and Means Committee. And you can do that easily through the website, which is one of the bajillion links we put in the chat during this meeting, and that we will send you as well at the end. Do people?
Yeah, questions.
Yeah, questions.
Ideas or suggestions.
Julia.
Oh, no, I don't have a.
Okay, you
I'm sorry.
unmuted. So it's
Excuse
sort of
me.
like raising your hand, unmuting.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know to ask a good question, but this is a good foundation for me to have some frame of reference. So thank you.
Well, and I just want to reiterate what we said at the beginning, which is so many tough decisions are going to be made in this year's budget process because of the disappearance of the federal money. And so if you never felt comfortable doing it before, you got to do it this year,
Yeah.
because they will make hard decisions based on the calls that they get.
Okay.
Yeah. And Claudia, you also unmuted. Did you have a question or comment?
I didn't, but I want to thank you. This is really, really helpful. I do have a question though, because someone suggested to us and it was someone sort of inside the state realm, of pushing a topic that we hadn't previously pushed now during this April, and it feels like it's late. And that's kind of one of the reasons I joined this call.
I'm sorry, what topic?
Well, just a new, something new that we would be advancing.
A new budget item or?
Yeah.
And it's still, as Andrea showed, it's a fine time for the budget as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be an amendment to the House budget, for instance.
I mean, the House Ways and Means, but their first draft will come out probably a week from today. And again, there's no perfect time. There's no hardcore deadline. It's just, think about it. If you're working on, a $60 billion budget, you're probably not doing it all the night before. So the closer and closer you get to when they're, issuing a draft or starting to take amendments, then it starts to get a little late for the House, but it's not too late to focus on the Senate because they all have their things. Like the Senate really likes to take the lead on some things, and they know the House will take the lead on that, and then they can negotiate it. So there's all that. But yeah, Larry.
I would just commend a couple of organizations who do a pretty good job of keeping track of things in at least my world. The FERCOG is doing a terrific job in identifying priorities that affect the sustainability of towns like ours in Western Mass and correlating that to legislation that's moving through the pipeline. The MMA is also doing a good job. And I think both those websites are worth exploring. And also the STAM, the State Small Town Administrators of Massachusetts, they have a good organization that's keeping track of things that affect all of the small towns. And I'm an advocate for sustainability of rural communities, and this is those three are doing, I think, a commendable job. And
Thanks for listing the
yeah,
resources. And also Andrea has a alert out of her organization, Public Health Institute of Western Mass, and we do a lot of work with the Massachusetts Public Health Alliance as well.
Yeah, I'm going to put MPHA's link in there. They're able to do a lot more indirect lobbying, a lot more outreach than we are really. And we kind of follow them. We follow the Western Mass Network, the Western Mass Network and homelessness. You know, we follow a lot of those, and then but I'll put I'll put our policy priorities link up there too.
I'm going to stop the recording. I think.
Thank you all for